Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on Extra Sports 1300 or 740 KVOR, or whether you are listening on the apps for those two fine radio stations. And you can listen to not only this show, but any of your favorite shows that are on these two radio stations in crystal clear streaming audio. They are free to download, free to use, and they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and I'd love to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Get to the news of the day regarding the Denver Broncos momentarily. But first, I want to start with what we saw last night between the Denver Nuggets and the OKC Thunder. And look, we've waited 3 months, more than that, to finally see a rematch between the Denver Nuggets and Oklahoma City Thunder after their epic 7-game series in the playoffs last year. And in that time, public sentiment has moved a little bit towards the Denver Nuggets being the better of the two teams. And that's because of a combination of the way that the Nuggets played without Nikola Jokic, the fact that maybe this team is more, and somebody has been recognized for that. And because OKC, after that torrid, 24-1 start to begin the year, they had regressed a little bit, right? And it allowed people to go from, is OKC only competing with that Warriors team or the Bulls team that won 72 games, to now, maybe it is a little bit more wide open, and maybe, just maybe, the Denver Nuggets are actually the best team in the NBA. Well, all that will have to wait, because OKC last night made a statement that the NBA runs still through them as they beat the Nuggets in Denver 121 to 111, and watching the game, it wasn't even really that close. That was a wire-to-wire win in which the Nuggets were just desperately heaving threes to make that a respectable margin of defeat. The OKC was better the entire night. And I'm not going to do the thing where you go, well, look at who the Nuggets were missing, because honestly, look at who both teams were missing. Right? Nuggets didn't have Aaron Gordon, Cam Johnson, Christian Brown, but OKC didn't have Jalen Williams, who was arguably their second best player, or Alex Caruso, whose defense against Nikola Jokic in their playoff series last year made quite a bit of the difference. So to me, the missing personnel, that's a wash. So that was real, what you saw last night. And now some things are going to change. Nikola Jokic won't have a minutes restriction. But look, in the time he was playing, he was like a -6. So I give full marks to OKC. They were the better team. They deserved to win. And I'm not going to sit here and poke holes in it, because if the Denver Nuggets would have won last night, I wouldn't have been poking holes in that either. But what it does do, it makes it a little bit difficult to fully gauge how a 7-game series between these two teams were to go. Not because one team is going to be helped out far more than the other if they get their players back. It's just that there's so many different players that might be on the court for a 7-game series. So it's hard to take what happened last night and say, oh, this is how a 7-game series will go. But for right now, OKC is still the better basketball team until we see both teams have full strength. And let's not forget, too, that the Nuggets did have Jokic, albeit on a minutes restriction, and their newly minted all-star Jamal Murray. So the Nuggets had enough personnel to win last night. That's the way I would put it. And they didn't. And they got handled in the way that if you were to handicap a series between OKC and Denver, and if I were to tell you, how does OKC win that 7-game series? Last night is how they do. Because essentially the discrepancy or the gap between the Nuggets offense and the OKC defense is not as great as it appears the OKC offense to Denver's defense is. Right? Nuggets are the best offensive team in the NBA. Like, look up any number you want to, and it will prove my point. But OKC is a very good defensive team. And on the other side of the court, OKC with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was borderline unstoppable last night. What do you have? 34 points, 13 assists. Denver's defense is not as close to countering OKC's offense as OKC's defense is to countering Denver's offense, if that makes sense. OKC forced 17 turnovers. Right? So look at Shai and then look at the turnovers that OKC created. And it speaks to what I am referring to. The Nuggets have to get better defensively if they're going to down OKC in a 7-game series. And Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown should help that. But again, Alex Caruso makes OKC's defense better, and Jalen Williams makes OKC's offense greater. So you're missing a couple of the guys that you would rely on to be your best defenders, but OKC could bring some guys back that make them even better. So as much as I'm saying that OKC proved that they are the better team as currently constructed, it's also not a fait accompli that OKC is going to beat Denver in a 7-game series. Like, you legitimately still don't know yet, but all you have is the next game. And this was the first one between these two teams, and OKC was much better. And when you think about how last year's series went, the difference in the series became what? Health and depth. Nuggets not totally healthy, and it's affecting their depth. And when they get those guys back, then we can judge whether it is truly enough depth to beat the OKC Thunder. And they'll play again on the 25th. Aaron Gordon won't be back, but Cam Johnson might be. Christian Brown looks like he'll be. In fact, he's been upgraded again to questionable for tomorrow night's game against Detroit. So it looks like he's on the verge of returning. So when those guys come back, even without Aaron Gordon, you get a little bit better sense, perhaps, of how Denver matches up with OKC. And one other aspect of the game that at least David Adelman hopes changes is the officiating. Here's David Adelman on that last night.
It's a night-to-night thing with how they're allowed to guard him as well. You know, he shoots 4 free throws. There's a lot of contact everywhere. Their best guy shoots 13. So we just have to play through the contact. The guys said in the locker room, just have to have a more physical mindset from the beginning, and test those waters as best we can.
And of course, when he says he at the beginning of that clip, he's talking about Nikola Jokic. And this is something that goes back to their playoff series. And this is David Adelman planting the seed for the rest of the season and inevitably, we think, a 7-game series. This is the way the game is played. And we've seen coaches do this against the Denver Nuggets. Steve Kerr comes to mind. But also teams have done this with OKC. Chris Finch, most notably, the head coach of the Timberwolves, who went absolutely berserker during a game and then went off in this post-game press conference. But what David Adelman is talking about gets to the heart of the issue with OKC. If you just say, well, Shea gets all the calls, I don't think that's actually encapsulating what's most frustrating for NBA teams going up against the Thunder. It's not that Shea gets all the calls or perceived to get all the calls, because the Denver Nuggets would love for Jokic to get all the calls. The Lakers would love for Luka to get all the calls. That's not really what coaches are upset about. Coaches with star players want star treatment. The issue with OKC, and you saw it in the 7-game series, is that Shea gets star treatment. Okay, fair enough. But then on the other side of the court, Nikola Jokic gets mauled. And he's not the only one. OKC, let me put it this way. OKC is allowed to be physical defensively, and you're not allowed to be physical with Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. That is the frustration. That's telling the whole story. It's not just that. It's not just Shea. And in fact, I think it's more, in an ideal world, it's more about the other end of the floor. Watching it, that's what I would like the referees to tighten up. Because I think even if you don't like the way that Shea plays the game of basketball, fair enough, you don't like it. There is an art to it. There is a skill to it, as much as you may not like to admit that. But I think what you would want if you're a Nuggets fan, and what David Adelman wants, is just to say, okay, if it's game on, if on the defensive end it's game on, then let it be on both ends of the floor here. And this is the genius of what Mark Daigneault, the head coach of OKC, did in the playoffs. He knew this. So he put Alex Caruso on Nikola Jokic. And because of the perceived physical mismatch that existed between 7-foot Nikola Jokic and 6-foot whatever Alex Caruso, the referees let Caruso get away with more to even it. And in their mind, subconsciously or consciously, they're evening it out. Because if Caruso isn't allowed to be physical, Jokic will dominate him. Okay. But you're playing right into what OKC wants to do if you're letting Caruso get away with stuff. So there was David Adelman. Again, it's consistency. If you're going to allow the Thunder to be physical with the Denver Nuggets, fine. Those are the terms of engagement. David Adelman's saying we'll abide by those. But when it seems like it's so lopsided and so different from when OKC is on offense and when they're on defense, that's where the frustration lies. That's what David Adelman is fighting there. And not he nor I are saying that is the reason why OKC lost. That the officiating thing is a bigger picture part of this. The fact of the matter with last night is OKC was the much better team. They turned the Denver Nuggets over 17 times. They went absolutely berserker from 3-point range in the third quarter. They were much better than Denver. Officiating did not decide that basketball game. But you would expect over the course of the rest of the season, when these two teams match up 3 more times, and when they meet up in the playoffs for 7 games, it's not going to be that way. Games are going to be closer. And if these two teams fully healthy, it's a toss-up. then any advantage that goes one way or another could tilt the series, including officiating. But again, last night's about OKC saying it still goes through us. And you give them credit for that. Game one of their maybe 11 games that we'll see between these two teams this year goes to them by a decided margin. Nuggets now have a bit to go. You see it. They have a bit to go, whether that's just health, whether that's what they do defensively against SGA, what they do defensively against the other shooters. We'll see what matchup number 2 on the 25th brings. But round 1 decidedly goes to the defending NBA champions. Our question of the day today. It is on the Extra Sports 1300 Facebook if you want to react there, or you could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Do you think the Nuggets can beat the Thunder in a 7-game series? Little litmus test. See where you're at after watching that game last night. Much more Nuggets to come. Nikola Jokic is back, if you missed it. Jamal Murray is an all-star. And I want to get into those subjects as well. But coming up next, why the inevitable just happened with the Denver Broncos. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Our live stream is driving me absolutely nuts today. Not that that matters, but I apologize if you're watching the stream as I keep trying to adjust it, but it's driving me nuts. Anyway, welcome back. So much for the smoke screen that the Broncos tried to put out there when it came to what they were doing with their offensive staff. As today, inevitably, they named Davis Webb their offensive coordinator. They also promote Logan Kilgore. Shouts to Taylor. You know, Taylor used to work at KKTV 11. Her brother is now the QB coach for the Denver Broncos. But this was always going to happen with the alternative. And it didn't have to be, we're doing this just so we can keep Davis Webb from going to Vegas. Okay, but firing Joe Lombardi was about Davis Webb. The added bonus was that if you got him to be your offensive coordinator before other teams filled out their staff, you can't get him now. So like if Clint Kubiak, who took the job in Vegas reportedly, wants to make Davis Webb his OC, it can't even talk to him now that he's the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. So maybe it wasn't about the outside teams necessarily, but firing Joe Lombardi was always about elevating Davis Webb. And it was silly and I get it. You don't want to, there's a Rooney rule and all this kind of stuff, and I understand that. But you and I both knew the day Lombardi was fired that this had to be about Davis Webb. Oh, they were done independently of one another. No, they weren't. Okay, you wanted to make Davis Webb your offensive coordinator. That's why you fired Joe Lombardi, because the alternative is what Joe Lombardi put out, that Sean Payton was in one of those moods. That's not, you fire somebody because you're in a mood. That's not a good look for Sean Payton. The fact that you wanted to elevate Davis Webb and make him your offensive coordinator, that's a football reason. That's a good reason to fire Joe Lombardi. So the Broncos earlier this afternoon officially announced Davis Webb will take over as the offensive coordinator. And the only job that I thought, because I didn't think Davis Webb was a serious head coaching candidate anywhere, the only other job that I thought could pry Davis Webb from the Denver Broncos is if Jesse Minter offered him the OC job in Baltimore. That would have been a better gig than being the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Because there you would have Lamar Jackson and you would have certainly play calling duties. But on Friday, the Ravens hired Chicago's offensive coordinator and gave him play calling duties. So I thought that was the last hurdle. That was the last thing that had to happen. Earlier that day, the Broncos, it was being reported, were in compliance with the Rooney Rule. They conducted all the interviews they needed to. With the Ravens OC job being spoken for, that was the last hurdle, and it was only a matter of time. And here we are on Monday with Davis Webb becoming the offensive coordinator. So now the question becomes, because this is not in any of the reporting or the official announcement by the Denver Broncos. Simply elevating Davis Webb to offensive coordinator, to me, is not enough. Are you going to give Davis Webb play calling duties? Head coach / play caller, I think, is starting to become a bit of a dying breed in the NFL. It's dying a slow death, but a death nonetheless. And I just think that there's so much going on. that if you trust the person that is your offensive coordinator, even if you're an offensive-minded head coach like Sean Payton, then you need to empower him with the ability to call plays. And it's not that Sean Payton, you don't think Sean Payton can overrule Davis Webb? Of course he can. But I think this is, if they give him play calling duties, this is a superior setup to what the Broncos had a year ago on the offensive side of the football. And I would be curious to see, because of how close Davis Webb and Bo Nix, that relationship has been, do we see a little bit more of the give and take that you and I discussed throughout the season that we didn't think was quite happening? You know, Sean Payton knowing, all right, this is what I want Bo Nix to be versus this is what Bo Nix is. Is Davis Webb, with his relationship with Bo Nix, going to call plays and script out plays that tip the scales more in the direction of what Bo Nix is best at? Because you got to do both. You have to keep developing Bo Nix as a pocket passer. You just have to. He's not going to be able to be your long-term franchise quarterback if he can't beat teams from the pocket. But with Davis Webb, if he were to take over the play sheet, do we see a little bit more of a tilt towards, like, still with a mind on developing him as a pocket passer, but leaning into what he does well, which in turn grows his confidence, which in turn makes him a more difficult quarterback to prepare for. So I think this is all for the benefit of the Denver Broncos. But is Sean Payton going to do that? That's the last question to be answered. I would be surprised, given the other jobs that were out there with play calling duties, that wasn't part of what Davis Webb wanted when he ultimately did interview for the job, as informal as that might have been. I would imagine he wants play calling duties. Is Sean Payton going to give those to him? I think it's to the benefit of the Denver Broncos that he does. Doesn't mean that Sean Payton is going to have any less say on the offensive side of the football for this team. But you gave him play calling duties for, albeit a preseason game. The returns were good. If you believe in this guy enough to fire someone that you have coached with for 15 years, then you should believe in this guy enough to hand him the play sheet. And yes, you'll keep a watchful eye. You'll be right there next to him. Sean Payton isn't going to be hands off the wheel here. But you think about a game in the AFC Championship that was decided in large part because of a decision to go for it on 4th and 1 and a play call on 4th and 1 that was as bad as the decision. Now, this is not the only reason that it's for the best that the Denver Broncos give Davis Webb play calling duties, but it just, there's a very obvious example of why the Broncos need to consider this. So we'll see. Again, this news just broke a little over an hour ago. We'll see if there's any more to it as we move through the program. But the bigger picture of this, you keep Davis Webb and you're keeping Vance Joseph. That's a win for the Denver Broncos. But you can go even further by giving Davis Webb offensive coordinator duties. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the move and whether you think Davis Webb should call plays for the Denver Broncos. We'll have more Drive Time Sports coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Multiple ways to get in touch with the program. 719-247-1313 is the number if you want to call or text into the show. And then, of course, our question of the day, Nuggets losing last night 121-111 to the OKC Thunder. Do you believe the Nuggets would beat OKC in a 7-game series? Let's start with that. Our question of the day, Ray Dominguez, producer extraordinaire. What says the peeps on Facebook?
So on Extra Sports from Kyle.
Hang on. Still learning. Go
Still
ahead.
learning. From an Extra Sports from Kyle, he says, yes, they can.
Okay.
And from Todd, he says, if they are healthy. And then on KVOR, 1 second, we got one yes.
Okay. So everyone is in agreement, yes.
No, I apologize. He said, Brian said no.
Did Brian elaborate?
No,
Okay.
No, I'm trying to get him to.
That's fine. That's all right. All right. So, and look, the caveat of when they're healthy, I think you can watch last night and even throw Jokic into this mix, right? Throw Jokic into this mix. He was on a minutes restriction. He's not going to be on a minutes restriction, probably not even for the game on the 25th, let alone during a 7-game series, right? So that's part of the health thing. And then you have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown, 2 players that should help the Nuggets' biggest issue last night, which was defending OKC, especially out on the perimeter. The SGA thing, I mean, he's in that group. I think Luka's in this group. Jokic is in this group where you just say, it's not that you don't try to stop them, right? Nuggets threw double teams at SGA throughout the game, but there's an understanding that, look, it probably doesn't matter that much what you do, right? I would, if I'm the Denver Nuggets, I'd be more worried about everyone else on the floor. And not because they're better than SGA, but because worried as in would spend more of my energy on. Right? And we've seen teams that defending Nikola Jokic kind of do this too, where they say, like, it's not that they're not going to try to stop Jokic. It's just they want to make sure that they're not losing other guys and guys that they could defend better. But these are the problems that the 2 best teams in the NBA present, right? And I also don't think, for the record, that Cason Wallace is going to put up 27 points in every game that these 2 teams play from here on out. So I think that's the right, if you're going to say yes, that's the right thing to throw out there. And look, that was always the understanding. It wasn't that the Nuggets, with just Tim Hardaway and Jonas Valanciunas, would be able to beat OKC. No, it was with Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway, and also Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. It was about what the Nuggets were last season, plus what they brought in the offseason. That was going to be OKC. And you do have to have those players. I just don't, the differentiation I make is I just don't want that to be, oh, that's the only reason why OKC beat them last night. That's not true. But when you handicap a 7-game series between these 2 teams, it would be very difficult for the Nuggets to beat OKC if they don't have Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. And again, Christian Brown was upgraded to doubtful yesterday, has been upgraded to questionable for tomorrow night's game in Detroit. So it looks like the next time Denver and OKC, knock on wood, nothing else happens between now and then, we'll have Christian Brown, and we'll see what that adds for the Nuggets in round 2, if you will, with OKC. What was the text regarding, Ray?
the Denver OC.
Oh, okay.
This
Go
from
ahead.
Tom.
Okay.
The real question about Broncos OC is, do you think, like you said, do you think he would give up play
Yeah.
calling? And I don't. Tom doesn't think he
Yeah.
will.
I think he will. I do. But that text leads into a bigger picture thing. I don't know if you caught this, but in The Athletic, there was a piece written about the Vikings GM. And the Vikings GM was fired. Okay. And it was just one paragraph, not even a paragraph. It was 2 sentences in among many. Potential replacements in Minnesota, including George Paton. So here we are again, different sport, but history repeating itself. A franchise in Minnesota trying to poach the intellectual capital from a team in Denver. This is what Minnesota did with Tim Connolly. So if this is real, if the Minnesota Vikings are serious about making a run at George Paton, this will further add to what I think this offseason is when it comes to Sean Payton. Sean Payton will have to do more empowering of the people around him than he has done. Now, there's a practical reason why he hasn't. Okay? George Paton traded for Russell Wilson. I don't blame Sean Payton for saying, let me put my hands on the wheel here. Not to say that he doesn't listen to George Paton or entrust George Paton, but look, George Paton, you have to be fair, was part of the reason why the Denver Broncos were in a bit of disrepair before Sean Payton got there. Now, he did well in the draft. He had some players that you thought were on the come up, but he traded for Russell Wilson. One of the worst trades in the history of football. Okay? So I don't blame Sean Payton for coming in and saying, like, I like you and I think we can work well together, but I'm going to have a little bit more control over the personnel department. Okay? And the same goes for the culture, the offensive scheme, all this kind of stuff. Sean Payton saw what the Denver Broncos were, came in and said, I got to put in my program. I got to make all the changes from personnel to scheme to play calling to the way we go about our business to what we eat for lunch. Right? And Sean Payton made all these sweeping changes, and there is no argument in how that it's been successful. It absolutely has. But after that program building that goes on, and again, this is a team that made the AFC Championship. The program is built. The program is in place. Now, the people that you have chosen, because any of these guys, players, coaches, or general managers alike, if Sean Payton didn't want them there, they wouldn't be there. Sean Payton has certainly done some things to make my point. But these are the people that Sean Payton has chosen to work with, that believe that can help him execute his vision. So now it's about empowering them, believing that you have taught them what you needed to. They are on the Sean Payton program. Now you need to trust them to take some off your plate so this operation can be the best that it can possibly be. And where that pertains to George Paton is if Minnesota is serious about this and they start making overtures towards George Paton, the bargaining chip that the Denver Broncos have, in addition to being in a much better spot than Minnesota, which is a big one, But you don't think George Payton, if things just play this out a little bit, you don't think George Payton's going to have a conversation with Sean and Greg Penner and be like, well, just look at what happened with Tim Connolly. He became the president of basketball operations after the first time that Minnesota sniffed around the Denver Nuggets front office. Right? They gave him a better title, probably a raise. And I would have a hard time believing that Tim Connolly wasn't further empowered to make the decisions with the roster that he saw fit. I'll just tell you, if I'm George Payton, I'm coming back to the Broncos and I'm saying, I want to be here. Sean and I work well together. I want to continue to work with him, but I'm the front office executive. The roster is mine. And Sean, I'll work with Sean. I'll communicate. It will work together. You won't notice much of a difference, except that the buck will stop with me. And that's going to be another test of Sean Payton. All right, do you really believe in the guys that you've surrounded yourself with? Because now, in large part because of you, people like Davis Webb, people like Vance Joseph, people like George Payton, people like your players. All of a sudden, there's a market for them. And it becomes, what can you do to keep those people in-house? With Davis Webb, that's certainly out there. With George Payton, it's more of a wait and see. Let's see if this is more than just, hey, let's throw a name out there to add to our article, or if Minnesota is serious about making a run at George Payton. But this is part of it. When you start to have success, the people within your program are going to be offered things and are going to want more things because they believe that they are a part of what is being built. Now, you can push back against that. You could say that, again, bring up the Russell Wilson trade and say without the guardrails that Sean Payton has put in place, George Payton would further have screwed up the Broncos roster. And maybe you don't believe that Davis Webb is a better play caller than Sean Payton, but I'm just telling you the way it works. They're going to want those things. And if Sean Payton believes in these guys, he's got to allow them to work with a little bit less of a heavy hand. So I think that's quickly becoming one of the themes of this Broncos offseason. How much control is Sean Payton willing to give up? Because if this program is planning to be successful into the future, he's going to have to give up control. Yes, he'll still be in many ways the face of the organization. He'll still speak for the organization. This is not a radical change that I am talking about for the Broncos. But it's different. It's different than when Sean Payton came in to resuscitate this franchise. They're resuscitated. Kudos to Sean for doing that. The scaffolding is in place now. Now you got to remove the scaffolding and you got to let these people stand on their own and be able to help you sustain the success that you have had in your short time in Denver. So I do think that he's going to give Davis Webb play calling duties. Now, it may not be play calling autonomy like maybe Davis Webb would have gotten if he would have signed up with Jesse Minter in Baltimore, but it is play calling duties. I do believe he will, because I think he realizes what I am saying is true. He knows that he is going to burn himself out. If nothing else, he is going to burn himself out with so much control over every aspect of the Denver Broncos. He has got to empower the people around him. It starts with Davis Webb, and then we'll see what this Minnesota George Payton stuff is all about and whether a similar conversation needs to happen there. I think he will. I think he will give up play calling duties. But he will be standing right over the shoulder of Davis Webb. 719-247-1313. Again, Davis Webb elevated to offensive coordinator. Does not look like, with the news about Clint Kubiak reportedly taking the Vegas job, Arizona went with the Rams offensive coordinator. So it looks like the coaching musical chairs, the music has stopped, and Vance Joseph doesn't have one of those chairs. And that is a big win for the Denver Broncos, that both Davis Webb and Vance Joseph remain with this team. But how other things change, that's going to be interesting to watch moving forward. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, we thought this was sure to happen, but we didn't quite know until yesterday's official announcement. One thing that has been said about Nikola Jokic and his supporting cast that no one can say anymore. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Be back right after this. Welcome in hour 2 on this Monday. Drive Time Sports on your homes for Westwood One's coverage of Super Bowl 60, 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Patriots and Seahawks, if you hadn't heard. We'll get into that game as we move through the week. I actually have a question today about it that I'd like to ask you. I'll leave you in suspense on that. In the meantime, if you want to reach out, you can call or text in the show at 719-247-1313. Or if you are one of the few, hopefully soon to be many more, watching this show on a daily basis, whether it be on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or X, you can drop a comment right there and we'll read it on air and can display it on the stream so you can get your moment in the sun with your Facebook or Twitter avatar and your thoughts on the day's topics. A conversation is kind of emerging here with Davis Webb being officially named the Broncos offensive coordinator in a move that should not shock anybody. But the thing that is a little bit more up in the air is whether he is going to be given play calling duties, which I think would be in the best interest of the Denver Broncos. But my assertion has been met with a fair amount of, not my assertion about it being for the best for the Denver Broncos, my assertion that Sean Payton realizes this. I've gotten some pushback on that because of 3 letters, E, G, and O. So I'll ask you if you think Sean Payton's ego will allow him to give play calling duties to Davis Webb, something that the Denver Broncos need in 2026 and beyond. But in the meantime, if you've listened to this show for really any amount of time, because it's one of the things I come back to because we, just recently had the Pro Bowl rosters announced. I don't care a lot about all-star nods. Because of the popularity contest aspect of this, I think someone who ends up with 11, 12, 13 all-star appearances, I would challenge to say, did he deserve to go to all of those? Here's a great example. How many was this 21 all-star games now for LeBron James? Doesn't deserve this one. And yet he was chosen. So what I do care about though, is when you get named to your first. That matters. That's a significant moment in the career of a professional athlete. But 1, 3, 5, 26, from then on, you're an all-star. Jamal Murray is now and forevermore an all-star, as he was selected yesterday to participate in his first all-star game. And so this is a significant moment. And look, Chet Holmgren's the first-time all-star, Jalen Johnson on the East. For those guys, I care. But you get one, and then we move on because all-star games have become more and more irrelevant. But to get named by your peers, by the media, by the coaches, by the fans for the first time, regardless of what body of voters are picking you, that's significant. And that's something worth noting. And Jamal Murray is absolutely deserving of this. Career highs in scoring, assists, rebounds. And he is shooting better from the field. Ironically, not from the free throw line this year, but everywhere else on the floor, he's shooting better than he has at any point in his career. And you knew that Jamal Murray was a borderline all-star at his best in previous seasons, right? The best Jamal Murray seasons, you would say, well, he deserves to be in the conversation. But I've been one that says I haven't once said that he should be an all-star until this year. Because he has taken his game to an all-star level and has taken his game to a level that I thought he could always get to. You've seen this guy in the playoffs. I mean, he's one of the best playoff performers in the last 20 years. Why does the disparity between who Jamal Murray is in the playoffs versus the regular season, why does that need to exist? I submit to you that it doesn't. He could be a playoff riser. Other guys like that exist, like Jimmy Butler. But the disparity between the two doesn't have to be as great as it has been. So I thought Jamal Murray was capable of being an all-star. And I said going into the year, he had to play in an all-star level. It's time for him to make an all-star team. And to his credit, he has done that and has absolutely deserved it. This is not because, somebody was unavailable. Jamal Murray got in first try. Right? He's not an injury replacement. And a lot of this, too, it's not even like, oh, hey, Jamal Murray needs to do better at this or that in order to elevate his game. Just needs to be available. That's all it is. Think about the fits and starts that so many of his seasons have had. That's, I think, cost him all-star games. Because he played for a little bit. You're like, okay, Jamal Murray's getting going. Then he'd be hurt. And then he'd have to recover and he'd be a little bit slow getting back. And then he would ramp himself back up. Like, I think the biggest reason why Jamal Murray is an all-star this year and is putting up these kind of numbers is because he's available. He's played in 45 of the 50 games this year for the Denver Nuggets. And the irony should not be lost on anyone, the fact that he's been the pillar of health for the Denver Nuggets. Everyone else is dropping like flies around him. Jamal Murray's been the one guy that's been in the lineup far more often than not. But that's all it was going to take. The potential was always there with him. The skill level was always there with him. And then you have the thing that cemented it. He was already playing at an all-star level. But the thing that cinched it with no debate on whether he could be an all-star is the way he has played with Nikola Jokic out. Yes, Peyton Watson has been the most pleasant surprise over this time. And Peyton Watson last night was really good too, even with Jokic back. But Jamal Murray was the main reason that the Nuggets were able to stay afloat and do better than just stay afloat while Nikola Jokic was out. So that put it over the top. That made yesterday's announcement not at all surprising and would have made his, being left off of that roster puzzling to say the least. And this isn't just good for Jamal Murray and the Nuggets. It's great for Jamal Murray. It's great for the Denver Nuggets. But it might be the best thing for the All-Star game because of what Jamal Murray said about his intent when he goes to LA in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I really kind of lost interest in All-Star just watching whatever they're doing out there. It's just like, I'd rather go vacation if that's the basketball we're going to be playing, you know what I'm saying? I'm down to play one-on-one. I don't care. I'm just a competitor, right? So I would like to play. I know Wembanyama will play. I know Giannis will play if he were to. So I just I want to be one of those guys that's known as somebody who's gonna play hard every time he steps on the court and not just half-ass it.
For that reason alone, if he would have said that, and he's not the one to campaign. In fact, he has both minimized him being named an all-star and the Nuggets Thunder game in 1 week, because that's just how Jamal Murray rolls. He's not going to make a big deal out of much of anything. But if he would have said that 2 weeks ago, I have been saying, don't even look at his numbers. Just put him in for that reason. What the All-Star game needs are 12 Jamal Murrays in the West and 12 Jamal Murrays in the East. That's what's missing here. That's your complaint about the All-Star game. These guys don't care. They don't want to play hard. And here's Jamal Murray saying, I'm going out there to play hard. Now, it should be a little bit worrying to fans of the American team, the fact that it's Giannis and Wemby and Jamal who are all ones who want to play hard. But Jamal Murray might, in one foul swoop, go to his first All-Star game and save the All-Star game in 1 weekend. That's probably too much to put on one guy, because Giannis has been playing hard in All-Star games and it has not shown up in the result. We still come away incredibly disappointed. And by the way, the guy that he's going to have to, make an impression on more than anyone is his own teammate. Because I say a lot of nice things about Nikola Jokic, but his effort level in the All-Star game is not something I compliment. He's as big of a problem as any of these guys in just goofing off. So maybe being there with his teammate will get him to lock in a little bit more. But I hope Jamal Murray has a positive impact on this game. You couple that with the USA versus the world dynamic, who knows? I have a kernel of optimism regarding this year's iteration of the All-Star game. A kernel, nothing more. But speaking of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic going to the All-Star game together, Jokic, as you might imagine, probably happier for Jamal getting his first All-Star nod than any of the All-Star appearances he has made. To see, it'll be kind of neat. You got to put them on the same team, right? I know they're going to divvy out these teams, and I think there are too many international players to put on just one team. But you got to have Jokic and Murray together. And you got to have that two-man game. As long as Jokic is going to play as hard as Jamal Murray, you got to have that two-man game against a team of all-stars. Again, kernel of optimism regarding the All-Star. But it's not a Lifetime Achievement Award. It's because of what Jamal Murray has done this specific year. But as David Adelman pointed out, there have been a lot of big moments that Jamal Murray has contributed, and it's nice to see him get recognized for some of them.
You know, I saw that also playoffs, triple double in the finals. most wins in the last 10 years. Wonder that 55 teams last year, 17 this year, anywhere else. So in my mind, all those things make sense, except for the number. So maybe 5 years, you know,
And I asked this question a few weeks ago, just kind of threw out there, not really leading to anything, but just saying, remarking about the way that Jamal Murray has played, is there a level higher than also? And there is. And David Adelman just alluded to it. It's all NBA. So this was a necessary step here for Jamal Murray to fill out the resume a little bit more, but the way he's playing, that's a real thing. That's not just the head coach of Jamal Murray getting greedy and saying, I want my players to have everything. That's the next step for Jamal Murray. And it can happen this season. Is Jamal Murray an all-NBA performer? And I kind of went down that rabbit hole a bit today. It's position. So you have 5 spots on first, second, and 13. 15 players regardless of position. Is Jamal Murray having one of the best 15 seasons in the NBA? Well, he has the best offensive rating of any player. So there's that. But also, there's a list of only 7 guys that were qualified. Because remember, we got this 65-game rule, which again is wild to think that Jamal Murray on this page to qualify for that, given that his availability has been in question so often through the course of his Nuggets career. But of the qualified players, there are 7 who are either top 15 in some combination of rebounds, assists, and points. No player is in the top 15 that is qualified. That list could change, Nikola Jokic, as the season goes on. But the list is 7 right now. Jamal Murray's on that list. Luka, Maxey, Harden, Akvia, who's also an all-star this year for Portland, Jalen Johnson, all-star for Atlanta, and Josh Giddey. Those are the other 6 guys. What do I always say about Nikola Jokic? He impacts the game in so many different ways. Right? He's not just a scorer, just a rebounder, just a guy that gets assists. Although you'd love to have a guy like that. What makes Nikola Jokic great is that he impacts so many different aspects of the game in one night. Jamal Murray is doing that this year. Jamal Murray is top 15 in both points and assists. So I think oh, by the way, he's on up until last night, the team that many people believe was the best in the NBA, still one of the top 3 teams in the NBA at worst, and he kept the team afloat without the best player in the world. Yeah, I would say Jamal Murray, as of right now, would be on an all-NBA team. We'll see if he sustains that form throughout the season. But for now, he's an all-star. And now the conversation surrounding the Denver Nuggets can be what it was when they won a championship. Remember, it wasn't just Jokic. The talk was about the duo of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, the best duo in the NBA. And now Jamal Murray has added something to his resume that further fortifies the fact that the Denver Nuggets have the best duo in the National Basketball Association. Well-deserved for Jamal Murray. He is now and forever an all-star. And I really hope he has a positive impact on that game and gets other guys to elevate their game and play hard. Because that used to be must-watch television, the All-Star game, and now it's a dream. 719-24-7. 13, your thoughts on Jamal Murray being an all-star. It was, on balance, a more positive weekend than a negative one for the Denver Nuggets. They did lose to OKC, which might be the biggest, well, right along with Jamal Murray, the biggest story of the weekend. And then you had Nikola Jokic's return. Get to that, as well as our emerging question of the day. Davis Webb, the new OC for the Denver Broncos. Will Sean Payton give him play calling duties? More Drive Time Sports after this on 740 KBOR and Extra Sports. Fellas, Valentine's Day. You know what? It's basically the 2-minute drill of romance. Can be a little frenetic, can be a little bit worrisome, but only the best can come through it successfully. And Louisa Graff has the perfect game plan for you. We're giving away a Vermeil Pave lab-grown diamond heart pendant. It's worth $299. And you could get for nothing. All you need to do is enter to win right now at xtrasports1300.com or kvor.com. Either way is good. Just enter before Sunday. Speaking of 2-minute drills, that would be a big job for an offensive play caller, don't you think? So this just coming in from the Denver Post. So that while Davis Webb has been named as the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos, a source says that there's no language in his contract guaranteeing him play calling duties. Now, is that something that normally, I don't know how often we've delved into offensive coordinator contracts. But there's nothing in the contract that guarantees that he's going to be the offensive play caller. However, with the interest that Davis Webb has gotten around the league, how could that not be something that Davis Webb pushed for when he met with the Denver Broncos in his official interview for the job? How did that not come up? And how could it not have come up when Davis Webb just saw what happened to the last offensive coordinator that didn't call plays? Okay, I don't know what jobs Davis Webb could have had. Did he turn down the Ravens, or did the Ravens decide against Davis Webb for their offensive coordinator job? I don't know that, and I haven't seen any reporting to tell us one way or another. Okay, but he was interviewed by Buffalo, by Vegas, by Baltimore. I think the Cardinals were talking to him. You think that he's going to garner that kind of interest around the league and then come back to the Denver Broncos and say, give me the Joe Lombardi? I don't think that would be the case. I don't. Now, could there be some kind of middle ground here where Sean Payton says, well, not year one, but year two? But again, what's to keep if Joe Lombardi's statement after he got fired has any ring of truth to it? Does Davis Webb feel like, well, what if the mood strikes next year for Sean Payton to make more changes to his staff and I get fired as a Monday through Friday offensive coordinator, not a Sunday offensive coordinator, meaning I help with the game plan, but I don't call plays on Sunday. I don't know how Davis Webb, if his star has risen to where it is, that he at least doesn't go into that room with Greg Penner, Sean Payton, Condoleezza Rice, I don't know who is in there, and say, I would like play calling duties. And look, I said this back in the preseason when Davis Webb took over the play calling. Yeah, this isn't Sean Payton ultimately passing the torch, but is this not a test? Is this not Sean Payton testing the waters of Davis Webb calling plays? Could Sean Payton have been thinking a little bit ahead here? in turning over the play sheet for one game, albeit a preseason game? And by the way, the Broncos lit it up in that game. I know it's the preseason, but that was Davis Webb's first time calling plays. Went pretty well. If I'm advising Davis Webb, or if I'm Davis Webb, I'm going into that room and I'm saying, what about play calling duties? I want them. I think I'm ready for them. Now, could it be some sort of succession plan where Sean Payton goes for 3 weeks or 4 weeks and then turns it over? Like, there's some gray area here. But ultimately, the question is, because Sean Payton's not going anywhere, is Davis Webb going to be his play caller moving forward? That is the question. So does it matter a ton if it's midway through this year, a month into this year, or right at the start? To me, it doesn't. If it were, hey, we'll put you on a 3-year plan and we'll work you, then that's a big difference. And I get it. This would be unlike Sean Payton. But Sean Payton has talked about some of the ways where he's evolved. Okay, and this isn't Sean Payton reinventing the wheel here. This is giving his hand-picked offensive coordinator play calling duties. Okay, Sean Payton's thumbprints are going to be all over whatever successes the Broncos have this season. He will get credit. Well, I'm not going to be sitting here on a Monday talking about the Broncos winning and giving Davis Webb all the credit. So if you're worried about ego, just know that Sean Payton's ego will be fed by the fact that one of his top lieutenants is doing a great job and the Denver Broncos are still winning games. And he still gets to be the guy that steps to the podium after the game and take credit for the win. And will be given credit for the win. Like, there's a lot of other ways that Sean Payton's ego can be fed while still giving Davis Webb play calling duties. But I'd also challenge, if you still don't believe that, I would challenge Sean Payton on the idea of, doesn't it actually speak to how much better of a coach you are that you're able to promote from within, empower, and one day Davis Webb becomes a head coach? Right? The Shanahan coaching tree is the envy of every coach. That's their legacy. Another beyond whatever winning they do. That's their lasting legacy. Davis Webb is going to outlast Sean Payton in the NFL. With all the talk over the years about how fruitful the Shanahan coaching tree is and how barren the Belichick coaching tree is, Sunday's AFC champion coach notwithstanding, don't you think that Sean Payton's thinking about that, thinking about legacy? The legacy of not only being the first coach to win Super Bowls with 2 different franchises, but the lasting legacy of my guys going out and having success. He's got Joe Brady now, who's the head coach for Buffalo. He's got Davis Webb as his right-hand man now. Dan Campbell is still trying to figure things out in Detroit, but he's had some success. Like, I get it. Part of Sean Payton's ego is the fact that he is a head coach / play caller. but it could feed his ego if Davis Webb is a smashing success as a play caller and a coach in the NFL. And who better to learn from than Sean Payton? See? Feeding his ego. 719-247-1313. Over the weekend, Nikola Jokic returned. It would have been nice if he put up the performance that he did on Saturday. On Sunday, but we'll revisit that coming up next here on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313 is the number. You could also answer our question of the day on Facebook. Do you think the Nuggets can beat OKC in a 7-game series? Last night's 121-111 loss. I'll get back into it during What's Driving the Show, but I want to get to your thoughts, and Ray Dominguez has your thoughts. Go ahead, Ray.
So from Brian on Facebook, 740 KVOR, he said no. And the reason is it feels like OKC just has the mental edge over us, kind of like Minnesota.
That's interesting. I don't know that I've thought about that just because there has been so many more battles with Minnesota over the years than OKC. We really just started with the OKC Nuggets timeline. But I'll tell you one thing that I think could help make Brian's case. It's what David Adelman said about the officiating. Like and I don't want to put words into Brian's mouth, but one place that you look at as a sign that maybe a team is in their opponent's head is when when that coach steps to the podium and starts talking about officiating. And what I can say, let me play the audio. Here was David Adelman last night talking specifically about the perceived disparity or discrepancy in the way that Nikola Jokic and SGA are officiated.
It's a night-to-night thing with how they're allowed to guard him as well. You know, he shoots 4 free throws. There's a lot of contact everywhere. Their best guy shoots 13. So we just have to play through the contact. The guys said in the locker room, just have to have a more physical mindset from the beginning, and test those waters as best we can.
And look, David Adelman did not go ballistic like Chris Finch did, so he's calmly talking about this. I think we're still in this is planting the seed territory, but I think if this continues to be a talking point, then I think we're going down the road that Brian is talking about. Like, look, Phil Jackson, even with those Bulls teams, as dominant as they were, used to do stuff like this. So I'll grant David Adelman a few matchups. And last year, look, he's the interim coach. Does he really have that much authority? Right now, it's coming from the head coach, the full-blown head coach of the Denver Nuggets. And it's him saying, this thing's got to be more consistent. And I agree with him. But you can't keep going down that road. Okay, what you hope is on the 25th that you see progress, and then you can drop it. But if this keeps being a conversation with David Adelman, then I think we're getting into is OKC in Denver's head territory. But thought-provoking comment there from Brian. I appreciate that on Facebook, either 740 KVOR or Extra Sports 1300. You and I, Ray, were having a talk off the air about comments that Roger Goodell had made about the officiating. Today was his State of the League presser. And what was it that he said he's amazed at how good the NFL officials are?
Yeah, I'm amazed at how good our officials are. And he said the goal is to start using AI and will work to help prevent the obvious error.
And this is, by the way, on the heels of, I think it was Jonathan Jones of CBS reporting that the NFL is considering allowing referees based on video replay to go back and call a penalty. But, and here's where it always starts, but only the obvious ones. Face mask, roughing the passer, those kind of things, the obvious ones, they're going to go back. I actually agree with Roger Goodell more than most people do, because I think what the NFL officials have to take in on a down-to-down basis, everything they have to see to be able to quickly adjudicate anything that happens, I think they are outstanding at it. I think more often than not, what makes the officials look bad, replay review is one, and the rule book of the NFL itself. May I direct your attention to 3 weeks ago with Brandon Cooks? Okay, referees got that 100% right, but they were getting killed for it. Why were they getting killed for it? They shouldn't be. It's because of the rule book. So I would actually agree with Roger Goodell in the talent level of NFL officials, but they have so many other things, and now Roger Goodell is adding AI to the mix. I mean, there's some things AI can do, and there's a lot that it can't do. But it's just another thing that will either undermine what the officials do, or it'll convolute what the officials are trying to do. Like, it's just, they do a great job. And I just wish more people were okay with the human error aspect of the game, because it seems like every expansion of the rule book, every addition to the rule book, and every expansion of video replay just makes things worse. So to me, that's the question I would ask Roger Goodell. Do you want to peel back some of the layers here and allow the officials to do their job and allow people to understand that these are human beings that are taking in all of this action at field level without the benefit of slow-mo replay, and they are infinitely better than any Tom, Dick, or Harry sitting on their couch doing this. Infinitely better. But there are all of these other things that are undermining what they do and making them look bad. And this latest thing thrown out there by someone in the NFL, and this is what they do. They send up a trial balloon, see how everyone reacts, and then they go, well, when we put out that report through CBS the other day that we were considering this, people hated it. So let's not do this. Let me be on record and say I hate it. I hate the going back after the fact and saying, oh, by the way, like the referees already got to explain a lot after a video replay review. They also have to say, and by the way, you know what a lot of calls would turn into? Remember that call when the Lions thought they had won the game? And then the referee got on and it was like, the ruling on the field is touchdown, but sorry, guys. Da. Like, replay confirmed that Cortland Sutton scored a touchdown, but we saw Garrett Bowles hold, so never mind. Fans will go ballistic if the referees are allowed to find something that they are not explicitly told to look for. The challenge on the field is whether Drake May made the line to gain for the first down. Go look at that. Although that's not something they should be looking for. That's what the microchip in the football is supposed to tell us. So that's a bad example, but you get my point. The challenge on the field is whether the runner had possession or the receiver had possession when he completed the act. Okay? You go in, you find it. We found that Brandon Cooks did not, but Riley Moss interfered with him. I know it's Jaquan McMillan. But we found out that 10 yards earlier, Jaquan McMillan grabbed his jersey. So it's pass interference. Like, this is the silly season for the NFL just throwing crap against the wall. It would be terrible. But I do agree with Roger Goodell that these officials, with the speed that the game is being played at, are remarkably good at their job. Remarkably good at their job. That doesn't mean that they are infallible. Even I get upset with officiating. Tune into Air Force women's basketball broadcast. You'll hear all about it. Okay? That it's not to say don't question them, don't criticize them, but understand that they're a whole lot better at their job than many fans give them credit for. And that's just when I defend officials, that's what I'm looking for. Just like admit that you couldn't even hope to do as well as they do officiating NFL games, and maybe come a little bit of slack. And understand too that the more pervasive issue going on in the NFL, the bigger issue is the expansion of video replay, and it's also the amending constantly of the NFL rulebook to add more, more word salad to these rules that the officials got to be able to decipher and in a timely manner be able to adjudicate and then explain to all of us why they're calling what they're calling. And if we could do it without, but here's my long-term goal for the NFL. If we could get to a point where television networks feel there is no need for a rules analyst, I'm good. That is the utopia that I am searching for. You know, Sean Payton always says you're looking, or Shangri-La is what he says. Always looking for Shangri-La. My NFL Shangri-La is that NFL rules analysts are abolished from television broadcasts. They don't help. More often than not, they just further confuse everybody and make everyone more angry. So if everything was closer to cut and dry and easy to decipher, to where you wouldn't need a special person to join your booth to explain what exactly we're being told, that'd be great. Roger Goodell also mentioned that they're going to play a game in Mexico City next year. You know who that's good news for? Us. Because one of the NFL teams that's playing that game will probably train here. At least that has been the case with LA and New England and the other LA. Both LA teams have trained here. More Drive Time Sports after this. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Monday. It's been a busy show and a busy third hour coming up. Glad to have you along. Hopefully you'll add to the busyness with your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Or if you're watching the show on our social media platforms, you can always drop a comment there and we'll get to them over the course of the program. Avs and Red Wings part 2 tonight. More on part 1 coming up in just a little bit. But right now, here are the 3 stories that are driving the show today. All right, we start with the game we were waiting more than 3 months for, but didn't maybe go the way we wanted it to.
Inbound goes over to Hartenstein. Somebody's got to do something. 3-pointers on the way by Wallace. The jumper is good. How easy of a play was that?
It was quite easy for OKC all night. Altitude Sports Radio on the call. You heard it here on Extra Sports 1300. The OKC Thunder made a statement last night, and that statement is, hey, we know those little side conversations you've been having. The NBA still goes through us. Because they put it to the Denver Nuggets last night. 121-111 does not do the Thunder's performance justice. They led wire to wire, and the game for large stretches wasn't even a 10-point game. OKC was the much better team last night. And one thing that you cannot blame it on is missing personnel. I get it. No Christian Brown, no Aaron Gordon, no Cam Johnson. But OKC was without Alex Caruso and Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams is an all-star. Okay, so to me, that's a wash. So credit where credit is due. The OKC Thunder proved to be the much better team last night, much like when we last left OKC, the last time they played the Denver Nuggets, they were the much better team. But just like that playoff series, there are some things that you think can change between now and the next playoff series with them that gives you hope. Right? The biggest difference, or I'll put it this way. Where that game last night was decided, and where a lot of those games last year in the playoffs were decided, was simply because the disparity, the separation between the Nuggets offense and OKC's defense was not as great as it is on the other side of the ball, on the other end of the floor. There is a bigger gap between the talent of OKC's offense and the talent of the Nuggets defense than there is but from the Nuggets offense to the OKC defense. Case in point, OKC's defense created 17 turnovers last night. Limited Nikola Jokic to 6 shots when he was coming off of a 31, 12, and 5 performance in just 25 minutes against the Clippers. OKC's defense can do some things against even the best offense in the league, which is the Denver Nuggets. Last night, I saw a defense of the Nuggets that was completely powerless to do anything about what the Thunder wanted to do. Shea dropped 34 points and 13 assists, and OKC was unconscious from 3-point range in the third quarter. Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown can help that. Can. Will they? That's why we watch the games. But if you're answering our question of the day, which is, can Denver beat OKC in a 7-game series? I think you look at last night's game and you say 2 players that would help would be Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown. But OKC says we're even better with Jalen Williams and Alex Caruso, which is fair. So in that way, I think it's hard to truly gauge how a 7-game series would go between this new look Nuggets team and OKC. But the players who are available were the players available. That game was last night, and OKC was the much better team. That was a statement win from Oklahoma City and shows that Denver, whether it's just health or raising their game a little bit, they have a little bit to go before they're ready to knock off the defending champions in a 7-game series. But there was good news this weekend, great news when it comes to the Denver Nuggets. Here's story number 2.
Yeah, I really kind of lost interest in All-Star just watching whatever they're doing out there. It's just like, I'd rather go vacation if that's the basketball we're going to be playing, you know what I'm saying? I'm down to play one-on-one. I don't care. I'm just a competitor, right? So I would like to play. I know Wembyana will play. I know Giannis will play if he were to. So I just I want to be one of those guys that's known as somebody who's going to play hard every time he steps on the court and not just half-ass it.
Jamal Murray is not only going to represent the Denver Nuggets in the All-Star game this year, he is apparently going to save the All-Star game. He's going to go out to LA and play because he shares in our frustration about how much of a sham and a farce that game has become. So if Jamal Murray would have said that earlier, I would have been campaigning much sooner for him to be an all-star. But he is an all-star, deserves to be an all-star in this season. And I'm not one that has campaigned for him in previous years. This year, he has put it all together. He's playing the best basketball of his career during the regular season, averaging career highs in points, rebounds, assists, shooting the ball better than he has in any season so far. He helped guide the Nuggets through a 3-week stretch without the best player in the world. Jamal Murray has elevated his game to the spot that I always thought it could go. This isn't I told you so. This is you see it as much as I do. You've seen what this guy is capable in the playoffs. There's no reason that there should be that night and day difference between Jamal Murray during the playoffs and Jamal Murray during the regular season. And the key, being available. The guy's played 45 of the Nuggets' 50 games this year. No ramp up. No missing games. It's just been Jamal Murray in rhythm, clicking every single game. And you get all-star level numbers. So the fact that he is finally an all-star, I'm not going to say it's about time like the NBA, it's about time. Jamal Murray, it's about time. He's had this capability all along, and he hasn't put it all together. This year, he has. Unequivocally deserves to go out to LA. And as an aside, I really hope that he can set a tone for at least his team in that All-Star game, because that's exactly what the All-Star game needs. It's effort. And Jamal Murray's mentality, that gamer mentality that he has, who knows, could make a positive difference. But the main point, Jamal Murray deserving of an All-Star nod. And he asked a few weeks ago, you got to change the narrative. I think the narrative or the storyline is what it was during the finals. It's that the Denver Nuggets have the best duo in the league. And when they are both right, when they are both healthy, when they are both on the court, they're borderline unstoppable. And now you can say that both of them are all-stars, further fortifying the fact they are the best duo in the NBA. So congratulations to Jamal Murray. Well deserved. We go to the NFL and the Denver Broncos for story number 3.
Well, it'd be a pain in the ass for him.
That was Sean Payton making a little joke about what if Davis Webb were to take the Raider job. And that's what he said. Well, you're not going to have to worry about that. Or I guess Davis Webb's not going to have to worry about that because Davis Webb today has been promoted to the offensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. This should not surprise you. The minute Joe Lombardi was fired, I told you this is about Davis Webb. This is about putting him in that exact spot. And they did that. And he deserves to be in that spot. But he also deserves to be empowered by Sean Payton. And that's the other half of this. Does not surprise. It was always a matter of when, not if. And the things that led to it, this being the when, Broncos conducted a series of interviews that satisfied the Rooney Rule. Baltimore decided on their offensive coordinator, which is the Bears OC from this year. That was the only other job that I thought that Davis Webb would prefer over the Denver Broncos job. So that made the win today. Now the if becomes, does Davis Webb get play calling duties? I think that he should, and I have yet to receive any pushback on the idea that he should. But he should because Sean Payton has built up this program, and when you do that, then you have to empower the people that are around you. You have to let your program stand in many ways on its own. It doesn't need to be micromanaged. You don't have to be constantly worrying about every single aspect of the organization. You did at first because the Broncos were a mess. You don't have to now, and that is credit to Sean Payton. But in order for this thing to truly sustain itself and for the Broncos to now be a perennial contender, Davis Webb has to be able to call plays. George Payton has to be able to build the roster, or else why are they in the positions they are in? Sean Payton must relinquish some control. He's still the face of the operation. He still has the final say. He has veto power. He's everyone's boss. Maybe not George Payton's, but in a more real way he is, right? He still has that power, but he can empower, like the stadium, the people around him, including Davis Webb. The pushback I have received from you today is that you don't think his ego will allow him to. And you have a lot of evidence to say that Sean Payton's ego is quite large. But the appeal I will make to Sean Payton is that your ego will be fed as long as the Denver Broncos keep winning games. Okay? He's heard the criticism after the AFC Championship game. Okay? His ego could have taken a hit in that regard. If the Broncos keep winning, I promise you Sean Payton will get all of the flowers. Because that's what we do. If Drake May goes out and throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on Sunday in the Super Bowl, Mike Vrabel's not going to get credit for that? Well, Josh McDaniels calling plays. How could he? Well, that's one of the benefits of being the head coach. Sean Payton will get his flowers. He will get his credit. In fact, Davis Webb is a hand-picked offensive coordinator. He wanted him. So he gets credit if Davis Webb succeeds. So, yes, it would feed Sean Payton's ego in different ways, but it would still feed his ego. He built this thing up with his people, his quarterback, his offensive coordinator, his play caller, his GM, or at least the GM that he said he can stay, his roster. If he can't cut off this little piece of his day-to-day or his Sunday and give it to somebody that he groomed to put into this position, then his ego's even further out of control than I think it is. I think Sean Payton will give Davis Webb play calling duties. And if Bo Nix does well, guess who drafted him? Sean Payton. If Davis Webb is a brilliant play caller, guess who hired that guy? It was Sean Payton. I really think I'm presenting a win for everybody. Davis Webb is empowered. Ego of Sean Payton is fed. Denver Broncos have a better chance at success next year and beyond. Everybody wins. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. The Avalanche are in action tonight, and at least one reinforcement is on the way. I'll tell you who next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Tough to appreciate the performance of one player when it's a crushing loss like last night was for the Denver Nuggets. But how about Peyton Watson? Okay, is he, was he a byproduct of, more volume because Jokic was out? Second game, Jokic is back. And in a game that Jokic struggled, Peyton Watson played incredibly well. You don't think, and I tweeted this out last night, you don't think that he was looking forward to showcasing what he's been doing for these last 3 weeks that maybe a ton of people haven't been paying attention to because Jokic has been out? Now he steps on a primetime Sunday night stage against the defending champions. A lot of eyeballs on the game, and Peyton Watson looks like he has looked for the last 3 weeks. So that storyline is continuing. This version of Peyton Watson is coexisting with Nikola Jokic. Now, my question is, how much will it exist when Aaron Gordon is back and when the Nuggets are healthy? And that's why I say, I've talked to a few people about this, I don't think you put him in the starting lineup. I don't. I think you put him on the bench and you say our bench can be even better than we expected it to be. I think you go back when everybody is healthy, if everybody is healthy. I mean, we're 6 weeks out from the most optimistic, well, I guess 4 weeks out from the most optimistic timeline, more like 6 weeks out for the optimism that the Denver Nuggets are going to be fully healthy, because that's how long Aaron Gordon is out. But let's say we get there. I still go Murray, Brown, Cam Johnson, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic, because I think the best version of Peyton Watson is not being put in that box that Michael Porter's been in. Let Cam Johnson, a more veteran player, figure out how to navigate that. And a guy that, by the way, I think that the Nuggets may not see much of a future with. With Peyton Watson, if there's any hope that Stan Kroenke's going to write the check necessary to pay Peyton Watson, I think you want to have that guy at his full capabilities. And putting him on the bench with Valanciunas and Hardaway and letting the three of them guide the second unit, that's where you get more performances like last night. Unless you want to put Aaron Gordon on the bench. Right? I think when it comes to paying guys long-term and when it comes to starting or coming off the bench, I think it's an Aaron Gordon versus Peyton Watson question. And I think you have Aaron Gordon in the starting lineup. But it is not disparaging Peyton Watson. It's just I want Peyton Watson to have free reign. Because you got this conundrum that you have going on that you paid Christian Brown, and now Peyton Watson might get a big contract handed to him by another team. You got to know if there's any inkling that you're going to match. You got to see the full capabilities of Peyton Watson the rest of the way. And I think you have a better chance to do that if you let him run with the second unit than if you try to put him in Cam Johnson's spot, in that Michael Porter spot, and then he's deferring to Jokic, Murray, and Gordon, and has Christian Brown to contend with. But he was really good last night. Really good. Maybe the lone bright spot, honestly. Tim Hardaway wasn't great. Jamal Murray wasn't great. Jokic was a shell of what he was against the Clippers. But Peyton Watson, every day, look, he hasn't done much in his career, if we're being honest about it. So I think it's right to kind of every game be like, okay, Peyton Watson, you're going to do it in this situation. You're going to do it in this situation. You're going to do it in this situation. Credit to him, he has. In every situation, he already looked like an improved player when everybody was healthy at the beginning of the year. Then everyone gets banged up. Peyton Watson looks like a star. And now here's the next thing. Nuggets are getting healthier. Jokic is back. Christian Brown, I expect to be back not tomorrow night, but the night after. Let's just keep seeing what Peyton Watson can do. This text coming in. Hey, Ryan, that was Joker's son that came back. He looks a little bit out of shape, and they've got a lot of other players that I think will help defensively, and I think over a 7-game series, Joker can figure it out. So that makes sense. Yeah, I get what you have to give credit to OKC first and foremost. Okay, they're missing guys too. And they whooped the Denver Nuggets. Like, let's just call it what it is. But no minutes restriction for Nikola Jokic in future meetings. Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Cam Johnson. Like, the idea was always the Denver Nuggets at full strength can beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Hopefully we have at least a matchup between these two teams before the end of the season to go off of. Disappointment can coexist with optimism, and I think that's where you are today if you're a Denver Nuggets fan. 719-247-1313. Do we have want to get to the text line and then the Avs, Ray? Okay. What do we got on the text line? Nuggets or Broncos?
Broncos.
Okay.
Yeah. 719, about Sean Payton. Being a head coach is to know when to say when and become a true head coach and oversee all aspects of the team. Turn over offense, defense, special team to the coaches you hired, and then you will have more time to figure out time management and time to figure out 4th and 1 decisions. That's why you hire the best at what they do and let them do it.
Right. Could not agree more. Perfect text.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here. And look, the time is now. It wasn't last year. It wasn't the year before. Okay, this is not something, because I think some people are like, whoa, Sean Payton's been one of the best play callers in the league for nearly 20 years, and because of 4th and 1, you want to take it away from him. No. There are more reasons than just 4th and 1 in the AFC Championship to do this. Sean Payton had to have full control of everything because the Broncos were a mess and they didn't know any better. Now, because of Sean Payton, they have smarter people in place, more capable personnel, they have a better roster, and they have a better leader. So the next step in the Broncos' evolution here is for Sean Payton, if you want to call it a more CEO type, that's fine. But it's not last year that he should have done this. It's not the year before. Sean Payton shouldn't have came back to the Denver Broncos not calling plays. It's right now. The moment is now to do this. And it is a little bit because of 4th and 1, but not completely because of it. 4th and 1 allowed us to ask the question. Right? That's really, it opened that door. But if you think back to our conversations through the season, we've been having this conversation all year when it comes to the give and take with Bo Nix. right? Are you going to let him run? Does he have to win from the pocket? Are you going to do things in your script to open the game that are more catered to what Bo Nix does well or what you want Bo Nix to do? Now you have a guy that Bo Nix is clearly very close with, and Davis Webb has a great relationship with him. They can work together, still with the long-term vision of Bo Nix being able to win from the pocket, because that's ultimately what he's going to have to do. But we've been having this conversation all year. That maybe a different set of eyes, a different play caller could help that balance under the watchful eye of Sean Payton. And then you had 4th and 1, and maybe in part you also had Jarrett Stidham playing. So it was like, okay, maybe Sean Payton is not infallible. Maybe Sean Payton could use some help, right? He wasn't able to get Jarrett Stidham to play at the level he promised throughout the week. So what happened in the AFC Championship, I guess, kicked the door down. But the door was already open. We've been talking about this all year. At the same time as Davis Webb was getting a lot of credit for his relationship with Bo Nix, the play calls he had in that preseason game, and just overall how people in the NFL felt about Davis Webb, that he is a rising star. But nothing in the contract that explicitly says that Davis Webb gets play calling duties. So we'll have to wait for official word. Now, Avalanche tonight, 7:00, hosting the Red Wings. They just played the Red Wings the other day, and they will have Devon Taves back in the fold. To be fair, they didn't need him on Saturday. They did just fine without Devon Taves, but Taves has been a player that I think, along with Gabriel Landeskog, the Avalanche have really missed, because they haven't been as good at preventing goals since he got hurt. Now, I don't know if Detroit is necessarily the team. They certainly weren't on Saturday, the team to stress test the Avs' ability to prevent goals. I mean, the Avs won 5-0 on Saturday in Detroit. But you've seen teams over the last few weeks get at the Avalanche and be able to put goal where they gave up 7 goals in 2 separate games. The game the other night with Ottawa, Devon Taves is a big part of the Avs preventing goals. So getting him back is great. Landeskog still out, but Jared Bednar doesn't think that Landeskog will miss the Olympics. But in true Avalanche fashion, one guy comes back, another goes out. Marty Necas did not play Saturday. Kind of surprising. I heard Mike Monaco and Eric Johnson mention it before the game on Saturday. But Necas is out, will be out again tonight. But Jared Bednar expects him to be able to play in the Olympics. So nothing serious with Necas, and Gabriel Landeskog's return is imminent. But they will have neither tonight, but it will be Devon Taves back in the lineup. And one other aspect of the Avalanche that has, kind of been put back into focus, as Nathan MacKinnon goes, this team goes. You notice that? Nathan MacKinnon had gone 6 games without a goal. He erupts on Saturday from the jump, from the opening puck drop. And the Avs cruise to a 5-0 win. So, yes, they're missing Landeskog. Yes, they're missing Devon Taves. But in a way, they were missing at least the best version of Nathan MacKinnon for whatever reason why he wasn't producing. But he wasn't. And it was another reason why the Avs had struggled as of late. But, man, Nathan MacKinnon was a man possessed on Saturday. And we'll see what he has in store tonight. Again, Avs and Red Wings coming up at 7 o'clock on Extra Sports 1300. 719-247-1313. Last call for your thoughts on this Monday. We'll be back after this on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Guys, avoid the annual Valentine's Day panic. Win a Vermeil Pave lab-grown diamond heart pendant from Louisa Graff. Premium lab-grown diamonds. Looks like you actually planned ahead. At extrasports1300.com or kvor.com to enter and do that by Sunday. It's a necklace. I don't know if I have a Vermeil. Look, I'm a sports guy, so it looks like it says Vermeil, like Dick Vermeil. It's a necklace. It's nice. If you go to the website, you could see a picture of it. See for yourself. This almost throwaway line from The Athletic. And by the way, Diana Rossini helped pen this piece on the Vikings firing their GM. Diana Rossini is as well connected with Sean Payton as any member of the media, which means she is as connected with the Denver Broncos as anybody in the media. So for something with her name on the byline to even in passing mention that the Vikings may consider George Payton as a candidate, that's interesting. Let me get the exact wording here just so you could judge for yourself if you did not read it. So this is from The Athletic. Again, the story was about Minnesota's GM that got fired. Said on Friday, Wilf, meaning Wilf, the owner of the Vikings, did not rule out Brzezinski, who is the interim GM now for the Vikings, emerging as a candidate for the full-time general manager role. Multiple league sources believe he would be deserving of consideration. Okay. Another name circulating in conversations with league sources is former Vikings executive and current Broncos general manager George Payton, who still has strong internal relationships. Payton remains under contract with Denver and is well regarded by both Broncos ownership and head coach Sean Payton. It's interesting. It's interesting because could George Payton's connections to Minnesota tug at his heartstrings a little bit? Right? I remember with Tim Connolly, it was like the Wizards job was kind of like, well, if Tim Connolly left, it might be, to go back home and build up that program and whatever. Are those ties to that organization strong enough for George Payton to leave the Denver Broncos? I would think alone, no. But if there's a raise and a better title and it's an organization that he is quite fond of and, a lot of other ands, who knows? But what's interesting to me is the fact that Diana Rossini's name is on this. Her league sources, in part, are Broncos sources. So could this be a leverage play for George Payton? To say, I don't want to go to Minnesota. I want to stay here. But I'd like a, better title, more money, more say, final say, whatever that might be. But also, and again, I'm just kind of going off the cuff here because it's literally just that, what I just read. Could it be like the Joe Lombardi thing where it's like, we have somebody else in mind, you can go. I think that's the more unlikely of the two options here, but it's just very interesting. It's very interesting that somebody as connected, and I know her world as a reporter does not revolve around Sean Payton, but it's just that when Diana Rossini says something about the Broncos organization, she has it on very good authority. So you can also believe the part where Sean Payton and the Broncos really like George Payton. But you wonder the league sources. So is this George Payton trying to get a little bit of a bump in some way, shape, or form? Is this like the Ravens with the kind of hit piece on Lamar Jackson that was put in the Baltimore paper that kind of felt to me like a trial balloon to see what public sentiment was regarding the future of Lamar Jackson in Baltimore? Like, what if we said that people in the hallways didn't love Lamar Jackson? What would you say to that, Ravens fans? Would you want him gone? Like, could it? There's a lot of different things, or it could just be this is one story that literally the only thing that is sourced with the Denver Broncos is how much they like George Payton. You don't know. But for George Payton's name to be thrown out there as an active GM somewhere else, and an active GM for a team that was in the AFC Championship, kind of feels like that guy would be completely off limits, like out of the question. Of course not. But does it speak to the desire of the Minnesota Vikings? Or does it possibly speak to the Broncos liking George Payton, but maybe not loving him? We'll see. First mention of his name. In passing, it was much more just about the set of circumstances, mostly choosing J.J. McCarthy over Sam Darnold, that got their GM fired. But it just, as I was reading, I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. George Payton? He's employed last time I checked. So we'll see if there's an additional mention of George Payton in the coming weeks. Now, the Athletic article did say that they're not going to start their search and everything in earnest for a few weeks here. So keep an eye out. Another Minnesota team trying to steal from a Denver team. Just, don't stop. Took Tim Connolly and now trying to take George Payton. So we'll see how that goes. Mentioned Avs and Red Wings tonight at 7:00. Devon Taves is back. Olympics starting this week. Your interest level in the Olympics. I have a fair amount, and I'll tell you two things, and we'll get more in depth as we move through the week. Two big storylines. Okay, Lindsey Vonn and USA Hockey. Every time those two entities or people compete, I'm going to be locked in. Lindsey Vonn making her comeback. She banged up her knee the other day, so I don't know what her status is and how that will impact her. But coming back at 41 years old, one of the biggest names in not just Winter Olympics, but Olympics in general, making a comeback. Huge story. Probably the biggest story when you take everything into account. I said this when she won the downhill title a month or so ago. I said Lindsey Vonn's going to be the biggest story. What is NBC going to keep talking about? Lindsey Vonn. But also the Canadian-U.S. rivalry in hockey, just the hockey in general, I'm going to be locked in on. But we'll get to that throughout the week. And, oh, yeah, there's a significant football game going on Sunday. We'll start that conversation tomorrow. And, of course, you can hear the game this Sunday on both Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. That'll be it for today. Appreciate your patronage and your interaction. Enjoy Avs and Red Wings on Extra Sports 1300. Talk to you tomorrow.